through Bad Axe, Michigan, and came to a place where there was a fortune telling where you get your fortune and your weight. So we urged Ford to get on the scale, and and he did. He was a good sport. Out comes the card. You are a great person. You have a great future. You have this, and so I looked at it and I said, they got the weight wrong too. But he also ate a tamale with a wrapper on.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I'll tell you another story. Once in China, Henry Kissinger took a small group of reporters out into the countryside to do something or other, and he turned to Helen and said, ask them a question. Said, what do you want me to ask them? And Helen said, ask them if they know who you are.
Helen is not one to mince
Once
words.
Kissinger ran into the press office, press room, and he said, "No, I don't have time." And it was the height of Vietnam and so forth crisis. I don't have much time for you. And I said, "Start at the end."
That's what she said. It was a pleasure to be in the White House and covering whoever the president was, and to have Helen Thomas there. You know, she was a crutch when we couldn't think of anything to ask. She asked.
He was the gentle one, and I was the irreverent one.
With all this fun you've had, what's been the most difficult time for you in covering these presidencies?
Well, I'm sure we'd say the same thing. It was the Nixon covering Watergate, wouldn't you say, Helen?
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, they wanted to kill us. I mean, you know.
It was inexorable. It was a great tragedy. Nothing Nixon could do could change the whole picture, the dimensions. And you knew what the end would be because there was no way you could put Humpty Dumpty back together again. One thing after another, one shoe after another fell.
Yes, and I mean, you'd get these reports that these people, the plumbers, as it were, the people that broke into the Watergate, we later learned that they were drawing up plans to blow up the Brookings Institution. I mean, these were violent people, and I mean, it wasn't just you know, taking on the networks or taking on the press. These were people that wanted to destroy the press and the institution, as it were, and it was very, very difficult. But the country got through it, which I think is testament to the Constitution and the form of government we have. The government did survive. Yes.
Who do you think was the most media-savvy president?
Reagan. One story a day, and then they built everything around, and you were forced into their whole MO. So I think that he certainly, or his people, knew how to. Mike Deaver, one. I mean, the image makers.
Kennedy was also very good.
Yeah,
I think Jack Kennedy was the first president to really understand the power of television and what it could do.
Had the first live television news conference.
Yeah, you see, Eisenhower allowed television to cover his news conferences, but they wouldn't allow the coverage to be released until his press secretary had looked at a written transcript of the news conference, because in those days people were afraid there might be a slip of the tongue and the president might set off a war by accident.
That's right.
Kennedy thought that was nonsense, and he opened up his news conferences to live coverage, and when he did, he not only changed news coverage, he changed the presidency.
He did.
And we came to understand just how the president could use, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but how he could use television in the same way that Franklin Roosevelt had learned the power of radio and how to use radio. You know, if you look back through our history, it is generally the most successful politicians were the ones who mastered whatever the dominant medium was of their time. When people got most of their news through the written word, our founders were wonderful writers, and they knew how to write and connect with people through their writing. Roosevelt learned the power of radio. Jack Kennedy learned the power of television. I would also say that Newt Gingrich learned the power of C-SPAN. And because he put those you know, backbench Republicans out there on the House floor every night talking to an empty chamber, the next thing you know, the Republicans had taken the majority in the House. I think Barack Obama has been very good in understanding the power of the internet, not only as a fundraising tool, but also as a way of getting your message out to people. It's always the politician, it seems to me, who understands the dominant medium of his time, who is the most successful.
That's a good point. And I think the one sine qua non for Kennedy was he had a wit. He had a sense of humor, and he could deflect a lot of tough questions and so forth by, first time I said, "Thank you, Mr. President," Kennedy, it was getting near the news conference, and by arrangement, the TV and radio would say it would be limited to a half hour. So I'd wear 2 watches and try to call the shots and so forth. But Kennedy was wound up in a question of why we were importing molasses from Cuba or something like that. He went on and on, kept talking and kept trying to find the answer. And I finally got up and I said, "Thank you, Mr. President." He said, "Thank you."
Well, let's talk a little bit about the news conference. And you talk, Bob, about how important it really is as our only point of access to get in and ask tough questions. But that news conference, the presidential news conference, has changed so dramatically from what it's been. Do you feel that it's still as effective as it used to be?
Well, you know, Helen told me something that I didn't know. Why don't you talk about that, Helen? That the reporters in the White House